Imagine a courtroom, the hushed reverence, the weight of expectation, the pursuit of truth. It's a place where lives are irrevocably altered, where destinies are decided. And presiding over this solemn space, a figure of unwavering authority, was Judge Victoria Sterling. She was more than just a judge. She was an institution, a symbol of justice in Alabama. Respected by her peers, admired by her community, she exuded an air of unwavering integrity. Her reputation was spotless, her career trajectory soaring. She was, by all appearances, a woman who had it all. A loving husband, a successful career, a life that seemed, from the outside, utterly perfect. But perfection, as we all know, is often an illusion. And behind the polished facade of Judge Sterling's life, a dangerous secret was festering. A secret that would eventually erupt, shattering her carefully constructed world and exposing a darkness that no one, least of all those who knew her, could have ever suspected. It started, as these things often do, with a connection, an affair. Not a fleeting indiscretion, but a deep, consuming entanglement with a man named Damon Cole. Damon Cole wasn't a stranger. He was a figure from Richard Sterling's past, a former protege, a man who harbored a simmering resentment, a deep-seated grudge. He was a ghost from Richard's past, returning to haunt him in the most devastating way possible. This affair wasn't just a betrayal. It was a calculated move in a much larger game, a game of revenge. And Victoria Sterling, the respected judge, the pillar of the community, was about to become a pawn in that game. The discovery of the affair sent shockwaves through their lives. Richard Sterling, the district attorney, the man who dedicated his life to upholding the law, was now the victim of its betrayal. But the fallout from this affair wasn't just personal. It was professional, threatening to expose secrets that Richard Sterling had desperately tried to keep buried. And as the scandal threatened to engulf them both, a terrible act of violence occurred. Richard Sterling was dead, murdered. A seemingly random act, a senseless tragedy. But the truth, as it so often does, lurked beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed. Because this wasn't random at all. This was orchestrated. This was planned. And at the heart of this dark conspiracy, the woman in the black robes, the embodiment of justice, Judge Victoria Sterling. But was she the architect of this tragedy? A cold and calculating killer? Or was she herself a victim, manipulated by a man driven by vengeance? A pawn in a deadly game she never fully understood? The answer, as you'll soon discover, is far more complex, far more chilling than you could ever imagine. Victoria Sterling's ascent to the bench was meteoric. She was brilliant, articulate, and possessed a steely determination that propelled her through the ranks of the Alabama legal system. Her marriage to Richard Sterling, then a rising star in the district attorney's office, seemed like the perfect match. They were a power couple, two ambitious individuals united by their shared passion for justice, or at least what they perceived as justice. Their life together, at least from the outside, appeared idyllic. Elegant dinners, charity galas, a beautiful home. They were the picture of success. But beneath the polished surface, subtle cracks were beginning to appear. The long hours, the constant pressure, the weight of their respective careers, it began to take a toll. The easy laughter faded, replaced by strained silences. The intimacy waned, replaced by a polite distance. They were living parallel lives, sharing a house but not a connection. And then Damon Cole re-entered their world. He was a ghost from Richard's past, a former protege, a promising lawyer who had once worked alongside Richard in the DA's office. Damon was charismatic, intelligent, and fiercely loyal. Richard had seen a bright future for him, mentoring him, taking him under his wing. But their relationship had ended abruptly, acrimoniously. A scandal, shrouded in whispers and half-truths, had led to Damon's dismissal, his reputation tarnished, his career in ruins. The details of the scandal were murky, but the consequences were devastating. Damon Cole, the once promising lawyer, found himself on the other side of the law. Accused of bribery, he maintained his innocence, claiming he was set up, a scapegoat in a political game. Richard, his former mentor, was now his adversary, leading the prosecution against him. The trial was a spectacle, the media frenzy intense. Damon fought fiercely, but the evidence, circumstantial as it was enough to convince the jury. He was convicted and sentenced to 5 long years in prison. 5 years that felt like a lifetime. 5 years during which he lost everything. His career, his reputation, his freedom. His wife left him, unable to bear the stigma, taking their young daughter with her. His world crumbled around him. And as he sat in his cell, the bitterness festered, the resentment grew. He blamed Richard Sterling. He believed Richard had betrayed him, sacrificed him to protect his own career. And he vowed revenge. He would make Richard pay. He would make him suffer. He would take everything from him, just as Richard had taken everything from him. And when Damon Cole was finally released, a changed man, hardened by his experience, he set his sights on his target. He would use Richard's wife, the respected Judge Victoria Sterling, as the instrument of his revenge. His reappearance would ignite a chain of events that would leave a trail of destruction, a trail of blood, and a trail of broken lives. Victoria Sterling's life, as perceived by the world, was a portrait of success. A respected judge, a pillar of the community, married to the ambitious district attorney Richard Sterling. They were the golden couple, their lives a carefully curated performance of power and prestige. But behind the closed doors of their elegant home, a different story unfolded. The spark that had once ignited their relationship had long since dwindled, replaced by a comfortable but passionless routine. Richard was consumed by his career, his focus solely on climbing the political ladder. Victoria, while outwardly supportive, felt a growing emptiness, a yearning for something more. She craved excitement, a thrill that her structured, predictable life lacked. And then, Damon Cole re-entered the picture. He was a reminder of a time when life felt less constrained, less predictable. He was younger, charismatic, and possessed a raw energy that was a stark contrast to Richard's controlled demeanor. Their initial interactions were casual, a chance encounter at a legal event, a shared conversation about a recent case. But there was an undeniable undercurrent, a spark of attraction that neither of them could ignore. For Victoria, it started as a harmless flirtation, a way to inject some excitement into her life. She wanted a taste of something forbidden, a brief escape from the monotony of her marriage. She craved the attention, the feeling of being desired, something she hadn't felt in years. Damon, sensing her vulnerability, played his part perfectly. He was charming, attentive, and made her feel like the most desirable woman in the room. He saw her, or rather, he saw what she wanted him to see. He saw past the judge's robes, past the carefully constructed facade, and recognized the woman beneath, the woman yearning for something more. Their affair began as a game, a secret indulgence. Stolen moments, clandestine meetings, whispered conversations in the dark. Victoria reveled in the thrill of the forbidden, the excitement of the chase. It was a dangerous game she was playing, but the risk only made it more enticing. She convinced herself that it was just a bit of fun, a temporary distraction. She told herself that it meant nothing. She craved the physical intimacy, the passion that had been absent from her marriage for so long. Damon, with his youthful energy and undeniable charm, fulfilled that need. He made her feel young again, desirable, alive. The sex was exhilarating, a stark contrast to the perfunctory encounters with Richard. It was raw, passionate, and exactly what she craved. She justified it to herself, telling herself that she deserved this, that she had earned it. She was a powerful woman, a respected judge, and she could have whatever she wanted. She never questioned Damon's motives, never suspected the depth of his resentment, never saw the calculating glint in his eyes. She was blinded by her own desires, by the thrill of the moment. She saw him as her escape, her lover, her secret. She never suspected that he was her downfall, carefully weaving a web of deceit that would ultimately destroy her. And as their affair deepened, as the lines between fantasy and reality blurred, Victoria found herself falling deeper into a trap she never saw coming. She was playing with fire, and she was about to get burned. And then, the carefully constructed world she had built began to crumble. Richard discovered the affair. But his reaction was not what anyone expected. Richard's discovery of the affair was explosive. His pride wounded, his ego bruised, he lashed out in a fury. He wasn't just angry, he was incandescent. He saw Victoria's betrayal not just as a personal affront but as a public humiliation. He railed against her, his words laced with venom, threatening to expose their affair, to ruin her reputation, to destroy her career. He vowed to take everything from her, their home, their social standing, her political aspirations. He would make her pay for her infidelity. He screamed. He would make her suffer. He painted her as a whore, a disgrace, a woman who had betrayed him and their community. He would drag her name through the mud, he promised, and ensure that she never held public office again. His rage was palpable, his threats chilling. Victoria, initially defiant, was now consumed by fear. The carefully constructed image she had cultivated for so long was crumbling around her. The scandal threatened to derail her ambitions, to shatter her dreams of a political future. She had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and now it was all about to be taken away from her. And then Damon stepped in. He was the voice of reason, the calm in the storm. He soothed Victoria's fears, offering her comfort and support. He listened to her anxieties, her despair, her panic. And then, subtly, insidiously, he began to plant seeds of doubt. He whispered in her ear, reminding her of Richard's threats, his vengeful rage. He painted Richard not just as a betrayed husband but as a vindictive, power-hungry man who would stop at nothing to destroy her. He suggested that Richard's threats weren't just empty words. He was capable of anything. He reminded her of Richard's past, his ruthless ambition, his willingness to bend the rules to get what he wanted. He hinted at corrupt dealings, suggesting that Richard's public persona was a carefully crafted facade, hiding a darker, more sinister truth. And then, he played on her deepest fear, the fear of losing everything she had worked for. He argued that Richard wouldn't just expose the affair. He would use it to destroy her, to discredit her, to paint her as morally corrupt, unfit for public office. He would twist the narrative, making her the villain, the homewrecker, the woman who had betrayed her husband and her community. And as Victoria's fear grew, so did her desperation. She felt trapped, cornered, like a rat in a cage. She saw no way out, no escape from Richard's wrath. And that's when Damon made his suggestion. He presented it as a solution, a way to protect herself, to safeguard her future. He suggested that they hire someone who could take care of Richard. He didn't explicitly say kill, but the implication was clear. He framed it as a necessary evil, a desperate measure to prevent Richard from destroying her life. He argued that it was self-defense, that she was protecting herself from a man who was intent on ruining her. And in her fear, in her desperation, Victoria agreed. She crossed the line, the point of no return. She authorized the murder of her husband. She had become what she had always despised, a criminal. And she had done it for ambition, for fear, for the promise of a future that would now be forever stained with blood. The morning was crisp, the air still carrying the chill of the early hours. Richard Sterling, a creature of habit, set out for his usual morning jog. He followed the same route he always took, a familiar path through the quiet residential streets. He was a man of routine, his life structured, predictable. He enjoyed these moments of solitude, a chance to clear his head before the demands of his job consumed him. He was focused, driven, his mind already planning the day ahead. He never saw it coming. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man wearing a mask, his face obscured, his intentions hidden. There was no warning, no struggle. A single gunshot shattered the morning calm. Richard Sterling, district attorney, husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, fell to the ground. His life, so full of ambition and promise, was extinguished in an instant. The masked figure vanished as quickly as he had appeared, leaving no trace, no clue. The quiet residential street was now a crime scene, the tranquility shattered by the brutal reality of violence. Neighbors, awakened by the sound of the gunshot, emerged from their homes, their faces etched with shock and fear. The police arrived quickly, sirens wailing, the flashing lights cutting through the morning darkness. The investigation began immediately. The scene was cordoned off, evidence collected, witnesses interviewed. The initial assessment pointed towards a random act of violence, a senseless tragedy. A masked assailant, no apparent motive, a clean getaway. But as the detectives began to delve deeper, inconsistencies emerged. Something didn't quite add up. Richard Sterling wasn't just any victim. He was the district attorney, a powerful figure in the community. His life was scrutinized, his relationships examined. The police learned of the recent turmoil in his personal life, the affair, the impending divorce. They discovered the heated arguments, the threats, the bitter animosity between Richard and Victoria. They began to suspect that this wasn't random at all, that this was personal, that someone had a motive, someone had a reason to want Richard Sterling dead. The investigation turned its focus to those closest to him, those who had the most to gain from his death. And as they dug deeper, as they pieced together the fragments of information, suspicion began to fall on one person in particular, Judge Victoria Sterling. The investigation into Richard Sterling's murder intensified. The police, their suspicions growing, began to scrutinize Victoria's life, her every move, her every interaction. They uncovered the affair, the secret rendezvous, the hidden messages. They learned of the animosity between Richard and Damon, the history of betrayal and resentment. And then they found it, the piece of evidence that would blow the case wide open. A phone record, a deleted message, a trace of a conversation that revealed the truth. Victoria Sterling, the respected judge, the pillar of the community, had ordered the hit on her husband. She had become what she had sworn to uphold the law against a murderer. But before the police could make their move, before the handcuffs could close around her wrists, a letter arrived at Victoria's doorstep. It was from Damon. He had vanished, disappeared without a trace, but not before delivering the final, devastating blow. The letter detailed everything. His long-held grudge against Richard, his calculated plan to use Victoria as his pawn, the extent of his manipulation. He confessed to everything, laying bare his motives, his lies, his treachery. He described how he had played on her desires, her fears, her ambitions, twisting her into a killer. He reveled in his revenge, boasting about how he had used her, just as Richard had used him. He had destroyed her life, just as Richard had destroyed his. He had taken everything from her, leaving her with nothing but the crushing weight of her guilt and the horrifying realization of her complicity. The letter was a confession, a taunt, a final act of cruelty. It was a message from a ghost, a phantom from her past, returning to haunt her, to torment her, to ensure her complete and utter ruin. And as Victoria read the words, as the truth unfolded before her eyes, her world crumbled. She had been a pawn in his game, a puppet on his strings. She had committed the ultimate betrayal, the ultimate crime, and she had done it all for a man who had never cared for her, a man who had only used her to exact his revenge. The police arrived soon after, the letter clutched in Victoria's trembling hands. Her arrest was swift, the media frenzy immediate. Her carefully constructed world had imploded, leaving her exposed, vulnerable, and utterly broken. The courtroom fell silent as the judge read the sentence. Life imprisonment. Victoria Sterling, once a symbol of justice, was now condemned to a life behind bars. Her fall from grace was complete, her future a bleak and unforgiving reality. From the heights of power to the depths of disgrace, her journey was a stark reminder that even those in the highest positions can fall prey to the darkest impulses. But the story doesn't end there. Damon Cole, the mastermind behind the manipulation, the architect of Victoria's downfall, remains at large. The police continue their relentless pursuit, following every lead, every whisper, every fleeting shadow. He is a ghost, a phantom, a constant reminder of the betrayal that shattered Victoria's life. The search for Damon Cole is a testament to the enduring power of justice, a promise that even in the darkest corners, the truth will eventually prevail. The story of Judge Victoria Sterling is a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the highest can fall, a testament to ambition's destructive power and the devastating consequences of betrayal. What drove Victoria? Victim or willing participant? Let us know your theories in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe for more gripping true crime content. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and share it with your friends so they can join the discussion. We appreciate your support.